If you're looking for the most explosive deck to play right now, this Rogue Rank 1 Legend deck is probably the most explosive deck I've ever seen. Robot Wizard was able to reach Rank 1 Legend with his take on Coin Miracle Rogue. And honestly, I've gone up against this guy a few times, and I don't think I've seen anybody play this deck more effectively than Robot Wizard. So taking a look at this list, which has been a deck that has been refined more times than I can count, he is saying that Gadgetzan Auctioneer is not worth it in this deck when all you need is a 3-mana Edwin. Which raises the question, how good will this deck be if Edwin suddenly becomes 4 mana? But before we dive into that question, let's go ahead and take a look at the list and see what this is trying to do. And if you enjoy these kind of deck breakdowns, make sure to subscribe to the channel to be notified about our next episode. If you look really closely, you will notice that this deck has absolutely no direct damage cards. The only way that you can set up lethal with this deck is by generating a large Edwin or large Sinstone Graveyard triggers as well as Necrolord Draka weapons. There might be possibilities to use Scabbs to try and take over the board immediately and set up for your combo, but this is usually a different win con that we'll get to here in a second. But before you tell me that Scabbs doesn't belong in the deck, you need to see this game. I don't think I'm gonna win this. Maybe it's chase now. Wow. Amazing. Actually amazing. We're able to get the value from the Scabbs. Now you draw another card. Alright, it's just over. It's just over next turn. Yeah, that was big. That was big. Hold on. I'm just 30%. That's not 30%. Okay, no. Why do I have this immediately? Dude, how did I get the worst draws? How did I get the worst draws? It's fine. I can still win this, right? Why do I feel like I'm not safe? I didn't get the extortions, I didn't get the spikes, I didn't get the Sinstone. Oh, I'm alive. Alright, cool. Sweet. Wait. Alright, cool. Actually, if you would have had the knocker. Oh my god. It's still whack that I almost lost this game. He can't heal. Nah, I mean, he can't deal with this. There we go. Oh my god. The reason why Scabbs is actually not that much of a detriment in this deck is because it gives you a different way of being able to play the game. Because as I'll explain here in a bit, this deck is all about making the one turn that you need to win the game. You don't have to do it as early as turn 4 or 5, which is possible to do, but there are times where you need to set up with your Shadowcraft or Scabbs, not only for the mana discount because of the hero power, but because the battle cry is so massive. And when you have ways of being able to cheat out this card because of the 8 coins that you generate thanks to Snowfall Graveyard Lone Shark combinations, you also have a possibility of being able to play Scabbs on 6 if you have prep into Serrated Bone Spike value into your Scabbs for 6 mana. So you might be able to do this kind of combo on turn 6 and then set up for the lethal on turn 7. But fair warning, this deck is difficult to pilot. Since you don't run cards like Wicked Stab, Sinister Strike, or Tooth and Nefarian, you are pressured to get all the value that you possibly can out of your Sinstone Graveyards and your Draka. The key to setting up this deck effectively is knowing when to pop off the combo because you need to be able to win in 2 or 3 turns after you've done your large pop-off. But it's hilarious to me how consistent this deck is, because yesterday I was able to climb almost a top 100 legend using this deck primarily. And I tried to use a quote-unquote legitimate deck earlier by playing some Mage, but unfortunately I went 2 and 8 with Mage and then brought it back up playing this deck because it absolutely slaughters Druid. Ramp Druid is definitely the most favorable matchup that you have for you, and it's also going to be the most common, which is why this deck is able to climb so easily at top 100 legend. But what are some other matchups that this deck can do well against? To be honest, I believe this deck has a fair win rate against almost everything except for Priest. Priest seems to be one of the hardest matchups that we have, even though I thought it was Mage originally because of all of the freezing.
But as it turns out, because this deck can consistently make a weapon with more than 20 damage, if the mage hasn't already rolled their game plan or has a Viper or has any ways of being able to deny your Sinstone Graveyard minions, then it could be kind of difficult for mage to get themselves out of it. Which is another reason why I believe this deck is performing so consistently, because Druid and mages seem to be this deck's main targets. And it's still possible to beat the Miracle Rogue matchup, it could just be a lot more dependent on certain draws. Because this deck still has the potential of being able to pop off on turn 3. And honestly, in the Rogue matchup, you just need to do your thing before your opponent. But you can't waste your resources to generate, say, a 5/5 minion or a 5-attack weapon, because in the Rogue matchup, you need that turn 2 kill as soon as you can generate it. While experimenting with the deck during this season, I am currently at a 35 and 32 win rate. And sadly, since Robot Wizard didn't post any stats, this is the best thing that I can use that isn't using HS replay stats. And as you can see, my Rogue matchup is the most consistent. I did argue that Ramp Druid was supposed to be our easiest matchup, but the reason why there are so many losses on the Druid is not just because of aggro Druid, but because of my throwing. I threw so many games while playing this deck that I'm confident that half of my losses were actually winnable. Which is the reason why I ended up losing up against the Warrior. Because that game, I'll just be honest, I misplayed really badly. But the Mage matchup being negative does somewhat make sense, because this matchup can be all or in, and if you don't get any of the payoff cards, it can be very difficult to deal with the freezing effects. Because Mage also has a way of being able to freeze your face, thanks to the Amplified Snow Flurry. But if you remember earlier, I brought up Shadowcrafter Scabbs. You can actually use Scabbs in order to unfreeze yourself in order to get that last swing with the weapon if that's preventing your win. So I still believe that the Mage matchup can be good for Rogue if you get the right tools, but the freeze capabilities really makes this hard to judge. But overall, I think this deck is a lot of fun, but you really have to learn the Mulligan in order to master it properly. So let's go over the Mulligan, because this is probably the hardest deck that I've ever mulliganed with. But according to Robot Wizard, he says in the Mulligan that you want to keep any minion that is not named Lone Shark. You want to keep Shroud, Sketchy, Snowfall Graveyard, Gone Fishing, Sinstone Graveyard against everything that's not Priest, Blackwater Cutlass, and Scab and Bone against the aggro matchup. So there are a lot of cards that you could debatably keep, but I found that you really wanted to try and keep cards in combination with each other. A good example of this is the Scabs and Bone keep against aggro. Because I explained earlier, there are times where you want to use Scabs in order to set up for not only an additional 8 damage and 2 mana discount, but you really need the board wipe to give yourself an extra turn of delay. But if we look at the HS replay stats, we can see just how good some of these keeps actually can be. Obviously, Sketchy Information and Snowfall Graveyard are the 2 cards that you definitely need in every single game to pop off massive weapons. But the rest of the cards that you can keep in your mulligan kind of depend on what else is in your hand. The reason why keeping minions can be especially powerful is because you really just need to draw all the minions as quickly as possible. So if you have a Sketchy Information, a Shroud, as well as 2 minions, you're pretty much going to draw all the minions that you need in order to start the combo. It's just a matter of when you start getting your coins and if you're going to double them. Shatter Shambler as well as Blackwater Cutlass I feel like are always safe keeps, just because you have that turn 1 play that can lead to something more meaningful. But the minion draws are really the most important thing of this deck that gives it its consistency. And you can see this reflected in the Mulligan Win Rate. Other cards that are usually safe to keep are Shroud of Concealment, Sinstone Graveyard, Edwin, as well as Draka. The stats say that these cards are kept more than 50% of the time, but honestly, I don't like the idea of keeping Draka against every single matchup. But the number one reason why you are going to lose, and the reason why I was denied top 100 Legend at least 4 times, was because Theatar completely destroys this deck if they hit the right card. If they take your Snowfall Graveyard, if they take your Lone Shark, if they take your Edwin, your Draka, there are a lot of cards to where if they get taken, the game is almost automatically over. So it's not even like a specific class that we're really worried about outside the Priest matchup. Theatar really can destroy everything that we're working towards. So when you're going up against a deck like Mage or Druid, try to keep this in mind, because I personally don't like the idea of keeping Draka. However, I will always keep my Edwin in these situations. Now let's look at the Mulligan Win Rate, because we'll be able to see which cards are the most impactful when they actually start in your hand. And as you can see, Shadowcrafter Scabbs actually makes top 3 in this deck, further cementing that this card really does feel like it has a place in this deck. But it is very funny to me that Edwin is still the king, still sitting on top of the best Mulligan Win Rate card, and if this card does go to 4 mana, it's really going to raise an eyebrow on whether or not this deck can still be consistent. It's actually kind of surprising to see Door Shadow so high on the Mulligan Win Rate, and I actually kept this card more times than not, especially if I was going first, because finding another spell just gets us closer to finding the high rolls. But I wouldn't keep Door Shadows in your opening hand unless you have something else that's really good, like Shrouded Concealment or Sketchy Information to help supplement it. Because Door Shadows is just such a flexible card, you don't have to feel forced to play this card on turn 1. But the last thing that I'll say about the Mulligan is that this is one of the most important parts of this deck in order to play it properly. Because your card draw is super crucial in order to give you these potential turn 3, turn 4 high rolls. So if you're going to pick up this deck, make sure that you master the Mulligan, reread Robot Wizard's advice, and try to use these stats whenever necessary in order to give you the edge that you need. And now the last thing that I'd like to discuss is 4 mana Edwin. Does this deck still become playable if they just nerf Edwin and nothing else in the deck? I actually believe that it could still be a real deck, but I don't believe that just Edwin is going to be changed after playing this deck for a couple of games. Rogue is a very problematic class right now, and it's not just Edwin's fault. However, Edwin is definitely contributing to a lot of the frustrations that surround this class currently. But Sinstone Graveyard is honestly a card that I could see getting nerfed to potentially 3 mana. Rogue just has way too much efficiency with its class right now. And as we've seen with this Edwin nerf, Rogue was already on the rise when this card was changed, and now everybody just wants to play the new hotness. And the new hotness right now is making an uninteractive board that your opponent cannot deal with unless they have a very specific card. Which is the reason why Priest is so good in this matchup, because they have ways of being able to get around the stealth. But not a lot of classes have this capability. So if Edwin Defias Kingpin does go to 4 mana, I believe this deck is still playable, because keep in mind, there is the 1 copy of Shadow Step that you could easily use to try and tutor up your massive combo. And since you're messing with 8, 16, sometimes 32 coins if you have the absolute high roll, 1 additional mana on Edwin doesn't really seem like it'll make that much of an impact. But the problematic cards in this deck, in my personal opinion, are Edwin, Sinstone Graveyard, and to a lesser extent, Snowfall Graveyard. I don't think that we need to nerf Snowfall Graveyard by any means necessary, especially if we're going to nerf the other 2 cards, but this card keeps becoming a problem in uninteractive rogue decks that cause a lot of people stress. At first, it was Mine Rogue, one of the easiest decks to pilot that has the most simple strategy that we've seen in Hearthstone for quite some time. And it used to be that Snowfall Graveyard in combination with Lone Shark was nothing more than a meme, but now this is a legitimate strategy. And in Wild, Snowfall Graveyard was causing a lot of ruckus before they had to nerf Big Rogue. Again, I'm not calling for a nerf to Snowfall Graveyard, but it is very interesting to point out that this card has been a reason why Rogue has been so consistent for the past year. But if Edwin and Sinstone Graveyard do get nerfed, I don't think there's anything that needs to be changed about Snowfall Graveyard. Last but not least, is there any reason to nerf Necrolord Draka? There is some reasons to do it, but I believe there's only 2 nerfs that they could possibly make to this card in order to change Rogue. The first change would be just to make this card 5 mana, but I don't believe this solves the problem with Draka at all. If you want to make a meaningful nerf to this card, you need to just get rid of a durability. But getting rid of a durability means that Draka literally needs to create a weapon that is at least 10 to 15 attack in order to kill most heroes. If you have a 10 attack weapon, then you can easily charge face with it, as well as generating potentially a 10-10 minion with the Sinstone Graveyard to give you that 2-turn lethal. But if Draka does get changed to 2 durability, then I believe that people are just going to go all in on these style of decks a little bit more frequently. But I'm really not too sure how much impact this nerf would make. Because rogues are still able to generate a large weapon and kill you with just 2 swings. So it's the rest of the deck supporting Draka that is the main problem in my opinion. We can't speak for sure until we get some of these balance changes, but I do believe that Rogue is definitely going to get hit to some capacity, and it's not just going to be Edwin. Overall, I think that this deck is an insane amount of fun. However, its play patterns can be very problematic, especially if you see this deck a lot on ladder. We've already got the quote-unquote optimized Miracle Rogue, and it's really funny that we also have this all-or-nothing deck that can also be as successful as Miracle Rogue in other parts of the ladder. But in my professional opinion, this deck may not be as good as the original Miracle Rogue that we've all come to play, but this deck is a lot more fun than most of the Hearthstone decks that are available on ladder right now. And generally, I just love APM decks because I get to play as many green cards as possible. And when you're able to play as many green cards as possible, that means that you're technically playing more cards, therefore having more fun in Hearthstone. So if you're looking for a way to have some more fun with this game, I think Coin Miracle Rogue might be the deck for you. And as always, if you enjoy this kind of content, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel for even more content. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video, and we'll see you for the next one.